So, this is the video I had talked about a little bit ago during my ranting video that was going to be coming. Um, Warning to everybody watching, this is not an easy topic. And it's definitely more of a sensitive one. So people who are some people may have difficulty listening to this. But it's important for me, especially just for myself, that I talk about this, and it might actually be helpful, especially with some of my friendships that I have, because I haven't told this story to a lot of people. And yeah, it just might be something that you just don't know about me. So, I was recently asked how many siblings I have. And I have 3 siblings. I have an older sister named, or I'm not going to say their name, sorry. I have an older sister, an older brother, and I have another older sister. And when I was very, very young, one of my sisters, who's named Anna, she was diagnosed when she was really young with a genetic disease called cystic fibrosis. And she had quite a few other things that she was diagnosed with as well in the coming years. But cystic fibrosis was the big thing. And cystic fibrosis is a genetic lung disease. Generally what happens with cystic fibrosis is that it's a heavy buildup of mucus in the lungs. And there are other things that go into cystic fibrosis, but I'm no expert on it. But life expectancy is pretty minimal, or at least that's what we were told. My sister Anna was 9 years older than me. Is still 9 years older than me. And to a certain point, just the logistics of life and the high difference in age was a big factor, because while she was in college and working full time, I was 14 and I was hanging out with my friends all the time, and I was doing my own school and stuff. And so we really didn't have, I wouldn't say we had an extremely close relationship, but we still, all of us kids were close, but in relation to my my brother and other sister's relationship with Anna, they were a lot close just because of age difference mainly, and the logistics that came with that. Part of the experience with this disease that you have to go through is that the person who is undergoing said diseases and certain things that's wrong with their bodies have to go to the hospital quite often. A lot of times it'd be just a tune-up, and a tune-up was more of just them checking to see how she's doing, doing kind of a analysis of her health. And for me, that was difficult. And it was difficult because my parents would have to go up to the hospital with her, and most of the time it'd be several days of her being in the hospital, just going through the motions and stuff. Sometimes it was because something had happened and she needed to be rushed to the hospital just to do something. They were never really serious, but a lot of times, but most of her life was spent in the hospital. She was a very, very sweet person, very energetic. She was probably the most extroverted person I had ever known. I will ever know, and I don't think that's a bold statement by any means. And she had a very strong relationship with the Lord. If you remember from a few of my discussions before, I've mentioned that I'm a Christian, and there are various reasons why I had to mention that, just because of beliefs and opinions and stuff, and where that may be founded as well. And there will be a little bit of religious talking. If you're not into that, I'm sorry. But it really does come with this sort of topic, especially near the end. It will be very prevalent. And she, for years and years, she had to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. She'd go into the hospital, she'd have a checkup, it'd take several days, if not a few weeks, then she'd be out. And it wasn't really any easier at home either. We had to do IVs, or at least my parents had to do IVs, and they had to do special, special things so that she could clear her airways, and she was taking 1 million pills a day, just medication for each different thing. And one night, we went to a kind of a church prayer night, and it's one of those things where, if you're unaware of what these are, it's sort of a thing where there are a few people at the front, and you just come up to them and they'll pray for you. And you might not see the significance. It's hard to see the significance of this, because it's just like, well, why can't you just pray yourself? And the fact is, we had been praying. We were, my parents were always praying. But in Christianity, it is, there's a verse in the Bible that says, where two or more are gathered, he is in the midst, or Jesus is in the midst. And so, there's just, not that the prayers become stronger, but it is definitely there. I don't want to get sidetracked. But anyways, we went up to one of these church nights, and one of the things that she was dealing with was, I forget the name of the disease, but she couldn't have anything with gluten, and because even if she touched it, she would get, bloated, her eye, allergic reaction, pretty much, not as bad as somebody who has a peanut allergy, but pretty bad. And this night, I went along with them, and we, the people at the front just really felt like that was the thing that needed to just be healed. And so we prayed for a while, and that night, my sister Anna was like, all right, we're going to go to Wendy's, and I'm going to get the biggest burger they have. And, those burgers have buns that are loaded with carbs and gluten and all that. She was like, I'm going to, I know he's healed me, so I'm going to do it. And she had been struggling with this specific allergic reaction to this for a very long time. So it was not like this had been something that most doctors were saying would never go away. And she went up there. She told the she told the person at the front register that she was like, I just got healed tonight from I can't remember the medical term. I'll have to ask my parents a little bit just to remember. It's been so long. And she was like, I just got healed tonight, and I can have bread now. And the lady was like, "Oh, girl, yeah!" So she grabbed my sister like a giant double cheeseburger, like bacon cheeseburger, and she ate it. And you have to remember, she couldn't even touch bread. She couldn't touch bread, or she would have an allergic reaction. And she ate the entire thing, perfectly fine. And from then on, she never experienced any allergic reactions to bread, ever again. And the one interesting thing was that she actually she never had allergic reactions when we were taking communion. And I'm not Catholic, but I'm Christian, and I just thought that might be important to state. But during communion, she could touch bread, she could eat bread. There was nothing would happen. But if it wasn't in communion, she couldn't do it. And she was healed of that. She was healed of a few other things in her life, but I kind of want to skip to the most important part. So during this time, me and my family, we used to live in Tennessee, and my dad was an entrepreneur. He was running his own business, and the United States is not geared toward helping small businesses. So, I mean, they really they put as many taxes on you as they possibly can, and make it so difficult. And it didn't work out. Having his own business just didn't work out, and so we were running out of money. We were running out of money quick, and so we decided to sell a bunch of our things and then move somewhere else. And that was hard for me for a lot of reasons, mostly because I had made a lot of friends, and a lot of really close friends there. For 8 years, I had probably 30 or 40 friends on the street. And we left, and we were homeless, pretty much. And my mom told me, pack up a week's worth of clothes, because some of our friends, some very, very good friends, were so kind, so generous to let us stay there, to stay at their house. They were having to take care of their grandfather, and so they weren't necessarily at their house a lot, and so they were like, "Hey, we got some open free beds if you want to take those." And we did, and turns out we were there for several months, and there was no heart. It was not like we were trying to mooch off of them or anything, not at all. That was not our intention. So we actually just wanted to get out of their hair as quickly as we could. But and my dad pretty much the first day we got there to the end was looking for jobs. He was like reaching out to every business head. He was doing Uber to make some money on the side. And then one day somebody cut him off, and he was involved in a crash, and it totaled our car, the only car we had. And anyway, so things just didn't look good. Fortunately, we had a place to stay, but we were technically homeless at this point. We were living off of some savings and just check by check. And we got an offer for somebody, and to my dad, and he took it. But before we did that, a good amount before we left Atlanta is where we were. We went. We left Atlanta. We went to Texas to stay at our grandmother's house because we were like, we can't live here anymore, right? We got to give them their space. We don't want to mooch off them or anything like that. That was not our intention. And we were there at my grandmother's house for a long time. Or not a long time, sorry. Just a few months. And it was very sweet for our grandmother to let us stay there. And then my dad got the job, and we moved moved out to California, which is where I am now. And my sister Anna, during this time, had been living in Tennessee, and she had met somebody who eventually became her boyfriend, and we knew him. We were during our time being there, and we went from Atlanta to Texas, from Texas to Tennessee, from Tennessee to from Tennessee to California. And we drove the entire way from Tennessee to California, and that was a nightmare. But she had met this man, and I'm not going to give out his name. I'm just going to call him Lewis. I'm sorry if you're watching this, Lewis, but that's your name now. And Lewis is such an amazing person. Really nice guy, like perfect for my sister Anna. And he helped Anna with her treatments, and he would wait up at the hospital with her, and she was about 23, 24 at this time, and when we were in Texas, I remember that night, when we got a call saying that my sister and her boyfriend had gotten engaged. And we were all so super happy for her. And so we moved out to California, and then after like a few months of being there, we had to, or not even a few months, just a few weeks after being there, we went to her wedding, which was an absolutely fantastic wedding. Everything went by pretty much perfectly. If you attended, you would know. That was very nice, but she was not feeling good. Her health really started to drag at this point. She was 25 at this time. And she just didn't feel good in her dress, and so she had to get out of it, and we just thought, maybe the dress is too tight or whatever, but her symptoms continued, and we had to go back to California because my dad had to, get to his job and start working and getting going. I mean, he'd already started his job, but he was, he needed to get back, and so we kept receiving messages that my sister just wasn't doing well, and eventually, I think it was, I don't remember if she went in for a tune-up, or if this was I think it's because she was just feeling so bad. She couldn't breathe very well and all of this stuff. And we went to the hospital, and I'm going to miss out on some information here because it all was kind of a blur, really. But she was in the hospital, and one of her lungs had, I forget the word for it, but one of her lungs collapsed. One of her lungs had collapsed. And some of her other organs were starting to look worse for wear. And so she was put into the ICU room, and we of course came as fast as we could, and we had friends and family there. Some of my brother-in-law's family was there, and they were so kind. They helped us get out there, and we were with her for several days, and The first really difficult thing was that she was put on a ventilator, I think it was something to help her breathe without her having to breathe. And she was also having to have a machine take her blood out, to take her deoxygenated blood out and put through a machine that made it oxygenized and then put back into her. And man, I went into the ICU room and she was just covered in wires. There were and tubes and tape, and there was stuff going down her throat, and it was and blood in a few areas. It was not. It is a very difficult thing, very difficult. And just need some time to think about this. Sorry. The first time I was in the room, I got sick. I felt sick. I couldn't be in there for long, so I had to step out. And most of our days were spent in the waiting room. And every once in a while, we would go into her room. We'd play some worship music in her ear, because they said that while she was kind of unconscious, she still knew when we were there. And even on the machine, it was telling us that her heartbeat would rise every time we came near and talked to her and stuff. And skip past a few weeks, or like a week or two. Or no, sorry. Skip past a few days, and we got one of my sister Anna's closest friends, who was a doctor that was her doctor for a long time. And her surgeon, the active surgeon that was taking care of her in the ICU room, sat us down in a room and said, the machine that oxygenates the blood clotted. There was a clot in one of the tubes, and she hadn't received blood for a good little bit of time. And this was terrifying, and I think they had to resuscitate her. I don't know if they had to resuscitate her, but they had to get her back into, the blood oxygenating and stuff. And pretty much it all went down from there. They got it back to normal, but the damage had been done. Her organs were slowly but surely starting to fail, and just giving up. And I remember, and I may discuss this later on in the video, because I have an interesting segment at the end that you may want to stick around for, because it's going to be very personal to me. But pretty much that night, or not that night, a few nights later, I had been called to the hospital. I had gone back to the hotel that we were staying at, and I received a call from my brother, I think it was. It may have been my dad, but I'm pretty sure it was my brother, who said, hey, we got to get back to the hospital. Something happened. We're not sure, but, this and that. We get to the hospital, and the surgeon comes into the room after we've been in the room for a little bit, and he pretty much says, it's either she's